In this video, I'm going to be talking about some of the mechanics behind Xenoblade Chronicles 2's combat system that aren't very well explained in the game and you may not be aware of, as well as some things to look out for while you're making your own teams. I'm not going to be breaking the game or showing off any crazy builds. If you want to see stuff like that, check out Manel. I'll link him in the description. He makes very cool videos and I urge you to check him out. This video is going to be more about making teams around what you have, and what blades you have available to you and how leveled up they are and what resources you have. Well, the first thing I always do when I'm making the teams, I check out character movesets and their animations. I'm going to show off some of Zeke's movesets just for random weapons because he has some fun ones, like with the bit ball he can pitch and he can dunk, and then with the ether cannon he stretches his leg out with one move, and I don't know, I just think those moves are fun and I like to use them just for fun. Yeah, I spend a lot of time just with a single character out in Lefthyria just testing out weapons. I urge you to do the same. It's it's the best way to see what moves you like, see what moves you don't like, and you should really just take the time to do it yourself. When testing out movesets, the main thing you're really going to want to look for is how long the animation takes. That's pretty much the only deciding factor that makes a move good or bad. I'll show off later how Zeke's smash moveset, or just his smash art on the Mega Lance, is very slow. It takes almost 4 seconds, and usually the launch window is about 5 seconds. So if he's not right on the Mega Lance when the launch happens, he'll most likely miss it, but I'll explain that later. Right now, I'm going to use Nia's Mega Lance moveset to show off how damage range works. So the Mega Lance is a long-range weapon, despite it being a melee weapon. It's not. Before I thought the ether cannon was the only long-range weapon, but the Mega Lance is also, which makes sense when you kind of think about it. But anyway, so if you see the little icon in the bottom right corner of the screen, the little elemental icon in between all your driver arts, when that's glowing, that means you're in optimal range to attack, and that'll give you a 20% auto attack bonus. I ripped off that number from Manel. Check him out. I'll link him in the description. When you're not in range, you just don't do the extra damage, and it's not a huge difference, but it's something to consider. Now, when you accumulate aggro, the enemy is going to be coming close to you, so you're not going to really want to be running long-range weapons on a character like Morag if you're running her as a tank, because she'll be accumulating aggro and the enemies will be coming towards her. But like I said, this only applies to a 20% bonus to your auto attack, so it's not the end of the world if you do want to use a Mega Lance on Morag, which is actually a good weapon to use on her because she gets smash. Here I'm just showing off how the attack range works for the Mega Lance, and how when I'm just using Nia, it's hard to stay in good range because the enemy keeps moving towards me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in Tora and equip him with some aggro boosting items and sets on Poppy, so that the enemy's always targeting Tora, so that I can just position myself in good range of the enemy. The only thing I'm going to point out about Nia's Mega Lance moveset is that a lot of her arts have they have forward momentum and they move her forward. So when you're trying to stay away from an enemy and you use a couple arts, you'll all of a sudden be right next to the enemy because she'll keep creeping forward with her arts. So that's one thing to take notice of. Back to what I was saying earlier about the long animation for Zeke's smash on the Mega Lance. It's interesting to compare them because Morag also could smash on the Mega Lance, and Morag's time is around 2 seconds it takes for between initiating the driver art and it hitting and the smash taking effect. But for Zeke it takes about 4 seconds because 1, the animation for him is long, and 2, he does a wind up and he hits the enemy, but that's not when the smash takes effect. The smash doesn't take effect until the last hit in Zeke's driver art, when he's actually coming down. So that makes it take quite a bit of time. Without any boosts, launch takes about 5 seconds, and Zeke's animation for launch for smash is about 4 seconds with the Mega Lance. So unless Zeke switches to the Mega Lance as soon as an enemy is launched, it's kind of hard for him to hit the smash with the Mega Lance. And on top of that, Zeke naturally gets an extension to launch time when he performs the launch. So I usually don't run smash on Zeke unless if I'm using Corvin, because Corvin gets a short smash animation and he's pretty good on Zeke. But I usually have at least one launcher on Zeke so that Zeke's doing the launch and that the timer is extended. And while we're talking about Zeke's movesets, there's one more move that Zeke can perform that I should really point out. And I know I said I wasn't going to break the game, but like, this is coming pretty close. Fury Dropkick Zeke. Absolutely insane. The enemies, they can't stand you. They'll just run away. They don't want to die. They don't want to get one shot by Zeke with this move. Oh my god. Best move in the game. Hands down. And the higher you rank your trust with whatever knuckle you're using, Zeke's gonna have a higher chance to inflict blowdown. That's if the enemy lives. Usually he'll just knock them out in one hit. But if they happen to live, they'll get blown down and they won't be living for much longer. Rest in peace, Arrest. Jesus Christ. Zeke's meme moveset aside, I'm going to be talking about DPS now in general, and how the class bonus from the attacker class actually works, and how big those gains are. Ideally, I would have liked to, examine actual damage numbers and compare them across different, across the fighter class, the elite fighter, and the master fighter class. But because of a hidden stat called stability, your damage numbers change like a lot, and they vary. So there's no good reliable way to measure that directly in game. So to counteract for that variability in damage numbers, what I did was I picked the same enemy, and ranging from normal fighter to elite fighter and master fighter, just using auto attack without changing Rex's strength stat. By I only equipped Pyra, Rock, and Gorg, when none of these blades have a strength mod, so Rex's strength stat was the same throughout all these clips. So what I did was I timed how long it would take to take out I forget what enemy I fought against, but to take out a certain enemy using just auto attacks. And it turns out that for just the fighter class, it took 1:32 to kill with just auto attack. For the elite fighter, it took 1:27, and for the master fighter, it took 1:18. So there's actually a pretty big difference between normal fighter and master fighter just for taking out with auto attacks. The more damage you're doing by incorporating arts and combos and specials, the bigger the gap is going to be between these DPS numbers as you increase your class. Because for each class bonus, it's a % increase to your overall damage. I ripped these numbers off from Manel's video. Again, I'm going to urge you to check it out because he's much more knowledgeable about the game and he knows what he's doing. For one attack-based blade on your character, that gives you a 10% bonus to attack. For 2 attack-based blades, and being the elite fighter class, you get a 15% bonus to all your attacks. And for 3 attack-based blades, you get a 20% bonus. So with one attack, that's, a 10% is a big bonus, but then you start getting diminishing returns, as with 2 you only get 15, and then on the third, while it's not diminishing, it's not increasing, it's at the constant return. So you get 20%. So first one's 10%, the next one's an additional 5%, and the third one is another additional 5% bonus to your attack. In a similar fashion to how I equipped 1 attacker, then 2, then 3, I did the same thing to measure the effects of the healing class on how much health you regenerate from a healing potion. First, I did it with Rex, so actually I did it with 0 healers. I just had Pyro equipped, and I used Anchor Shot to spawn an HP potion. And with that, I healed 719 HP. Then I equipped 1 healer, and I got 935 HP. So that's an increase of over 200 HP for each small potion. So that's not horrible. But when I equipped another healer, so I had Pyre and 2 healers equipped, I healed 1007 HP, which is not a big increase from having Pyre and 1 healer. So that was kind of disappointing. Moving on to Nia, because Nia's who's most likely going to be run as a healer, with only 1 healer, so only with Dromark equipped, healed 1026 HP. And that shouldn't make sense, because with 1 healer, Rex did 935, and with 1 healer, Nia's doing 1026. But the same way that Zeke has that skill in his affinity tree that extends his launch duration, Nia has something that increases healing potions by, I believe, 20%. So off the bat, Nia is at an advantage when it comes to HP potions, and rightfully so, as she's meant to be a healer, just thematically. With 2 healers, Nia healed 1105 HP, and with 3 healers she healed 1183. So again, we're seeing diminishing returns on each healer you have equipped to the amount you heal with a healing potion. And honestly, healing with a healing potion isn't great anyway, as post-game crit healing becomes the meta. But that's a different topic. What's important to note is that while increasing your amount of healers isn't gonna make a huge difference with your HP potions, what really should matter with the healer class is reducing your aggro. Now that I didn't really measure out because I'm lazy, but I assume that's going to be the same amount of increases as the attack class. So like one healer will reduce your aggro by 10%, 2 by 15, and 3 by 20. And in the same way that I'm going to extend that information from the attack class to the healer class, because I'm too lazy to actually try and measure that out, I'm also not going to be measuring how the tank class affects your aggro buildup. So again, I'm going to assume that one tank increases your aggro buildup by 10%, 2 by 15%, and 3 by 20%. And while I definitely could have measured out how the damage reduction aspect of the tank class, works out, that wouldn't be too hard to test. I didn't, because I'm a lazy piece of garbage, but I'm going to assume it's the same thing, 10% for 1, 15% for 2, 20% for 3. I'm sure there's data mines out there and actual numbers within the game that you can look up that someone can confirm, but like I said, I'm lazy. Now, taking all that into account, I'm going to talk about mixing classes. And I had this long thing kind of written out to explain why, but it's not that important, and I'm just going to sum it up briefly, where you're not really going to want to be mixing healer and tank blades, because healers are going to want to reduce their aggro and tanks are going to want to increase their aggro. And this is generally speaking. Of course there are exceptions to the rule, but just generally speaking, tanks and healers aren't going to mix well. What does mix well is the attack class. The attacks mix well with healers, and the attack also mixes well with tanks. Feel free to try this on your own, but this is just what I've kind of figured out through my playthrough of the game. Post game, healers can they kind of take an L. Like, I don't really run many healers at all anymore, and Nia's kind of taken the back seat, because once you start equipping crit healing items and you're getting these good chips for your weapons that increase your crit, and you're increasing your affinity with your blades, and their auto attack stat and all their stats are increasing, crit healing just becomes more effective than actual healers. So it doesn't really make much sense to have a healer. You still can if you want to, and in some cases you should, but in most cases crit healing does more than enough to heal for your entire team. Because of this, the crit stat is one of the most important stats in the game, in my opinion, and crit-based builds are very strong post-game. So even on tanks, sometimes I prioritize crit over the block stat, which is strange to me, because at the start of the game, when I wasn't that informed, I was always trying to maximize my block stat on my tanks and my crit stat on my attackers. But really, now I try and do the crit stat on everyone. There's a lot more that I had planned to cover, but I said it before, I'll say it again, I'm lazy, and also this video is getting pretty long, so I'm just gonna quickly bolt through some, that's not the word to use, I'm gonna quickly skim through some of the options that I was gonna talk about. So first I'm gonna talk about pouch items, and some of the best pouch items are the clicky clacks that you can find in Argentum. It's an instrument, and it increases your special recharge by 2, which is your recharge rate by 2 per second, I should say, which is a lot. And then also found in Argentum is the Narsapure Jelly, which increases your art regen by 0.4 per second. There are other desserts that do that. That's just the most convenient one for me, because you can buy both of them in Argentum, and I highly recommend equipping stuff that increases your art recharge, because that will it's just good. I don't think I need to explain why that's good to increase your art recharge. It's just good. Just do it. Next, for driver combos, you get increased damage during your different stages of driver combos: break, topple, launch, and you don't get any additional damage during smash, because that's like an instantaneous thing. There's no bar that depletes for smash. It's just smash. It's very good to optimize, your driver combos and make sure that you can actually pull them off quick and often, because it'll stop your enemy from doing anything, as well as increasing the damage you're doing. So, it's a big win-win. Nia gets access to break on a lot of weapons that are very good on her, such as the rings and the bit ball, as well as the ether cannon. So for characters like Nia, equip them with a beta scope or a master scope if you have it. You probably won't until you're in like New Game Plus. I don't think you can get it until New Game Plus. So equip a beta scope to reduce the break resistance so that Nia can continually break enemies. And a lot of people like to run combos on Rex so that he has topple, launch, and smash. I do it sometimes with Zeke too, so that if you're controlling Rex or Zeke, once Nia breaks a character, you can finish the rest of the driver combo, which is pretty effective. But, at times that can be boring to just kind of spam that. I do a lot for farming crystals and chips, but, it's whatever you want to do. I personally like to spread out the driver combo along the whole squad, so that I'm not just always spamming the same move and switching between blades. When it comes to spreading the responsibility of driver combos throughout your team, AI sometimes have a harder time lining things up if they have two moves in a row. Like if you're running launch and smash on Zeke, sometimes Zeke will launch but he won't be able to smash because the AI still has to rely on the cooldowns. So if Zeke is equipped with a Mega Lance and then an enemy gets toppled, he's going to switch to Pandoria to launch, but then he can't switch back to his Mega Lance because there's still a cooldown. So it makes more sense to space out these driver combos, so that with Nia, I usually have equipped break and launch, and then with Rex, I'll equip like topple and smash, and then with Zeke, I can have launch equipped as well, and he gets break on the ether cannon. So that way, so that one character breaks, another one topples, another one launches, another one smashes. Next, we're going to talk about the driver items. I'll do this as quick as I can. The Avant-Garde Medal, probably the best item in the game. That's where you're going to get your crit healing. The Optical Headband, that increases your critical damage. Also important if you're going to try to be doing crit healing, because the more crit damage you do, the more you're going to heal. Beta Scope, like I mentioned, reduces break resistance. The Burst Symbol increases your total, or your starting damage output at the start of a chain attack, which if you can stack those, you can get really high numbers in your chain attack. I tend to steer clear of items that just increase your character's stats, except for Morag. Sometimes I'll equip an agility boosting item if I want to make her like a broken evasion tank, but typically increasing your character's stats to increase your DPS at least isn't going to be as effective as directly increasing their attack through other methods. Like I didn't mention it before, but what's it called? There's the Noise Dampener, which increases your attack ratio for cancel attacks, which is it. And now talks about it more. Again, check him out. He's smart. It affects the damage calculations in a different manner, so that when you're increasing your cancel attack ratio, that's actually doing a noticeably big increase to your damage, and that's very important. So that's also a very good item to be equipping. One thing you might not know, which I definitely didn't know at the start of the game, is that auto attack applies to all your damage, not just your auto attack. So I don't know why they just call your auto attack stat and not just your attack stat, but yeah, auto attack applies to your specials, your driver arts, everything. And increasing your trust level is going to increase your auto attack stat. There are a few other things like timing your stage 3 specials and using stage 4 specials to dodge attacks and other methods like that I kind of wanted to talk about, but this video is getting way too long. Like, we're almost at 20 minutes here, so I'm going to end things now. Maybe I'll make a part 2 where I talk about more stuff, or maybe I'll do more specific videos where I dive into, one thing. I don't know, but thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and bye.